Hey guys, it's me and Marshall back again via Skype. Kind of like one of those shows where you've seen, I don't know if you watch WWE and then it's like The Rock's coming to Raw, but no, he's just on the Titron. Too good for that shit.
Yeah. I feel like I haven't seen you in forever, man.
Yeah, it's been definitely, 6 months almost. It's crazy.
Okay, whoa, relax. Like 2 months, settle down.
I swear it's been more than that. I've been ever since, it's got to be three at least, but whatever. We're on Skype. We're looking pretty. Well, I'm looking more fat than pretty lately, but this struggle with no gym's killing me.
I feel that. I feel that. It's tough.
I, I'm working out. I'm just doing more. It's just the eating. Like I'm bored, right? So you go and you grab yourself a pizza or some shit, and you're like, I went to Arby's yesterday, the most dangerous place in the world. I ate mozzarella sticks, four burgers, a loaded fry, and a poutine with a medium root beer. If
Well, buddy,
anyone could,
it's the
what?
junior, or it's the junior Arby sandwiches that get me.
Oh man, shout out to Arby's, best fast food. There needs to be more locations in Canada for sure.
There.
But let's get to this. We're talking about Fedor, arguably the greatest heavyweight of all time. Not in my opinion, in Marshall's, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's the greatest heavyweight. If you look at his resume, the longevity, his titles he held, I just think he's done the most. So what we're going to be talking about is what if Fedor Emelianenko, the last emperor, had have signed with the UFC. We're going to be looking at two major points. The first would be back in 2007 when the Pride FC was bought by the UFC, and he decided to sign with Bodog and Affliction.
Hmm.
And then in 2011, when Strikeforce was bought by the UFC, and he decided to go to Bellator.
Um, so if he was in the UFC, I think I'm going to start off the first time.
Yeah.
Uh, it would have been more of a perfect timing for him to go to the UFC. The
Mhm.
earlier the better because it would have been better for his legacy. I think the heavyweight division got tougher over time. I mean, around the Affliction time, I guess there was an okay amount of fighters. Um, but like the Pride guy, like who was champion at that time? Frank Mir. You had like
The UFC, the champ in 2007 was Randy.
okay, so he definitely would have been a champion at that point
Yeah.
because it would. So you would have had Randy Couture. The big thing like Frank Mir, Shane Carwin wasn't even a threat yet. Junior Dos Santos wasn't around, so the competition would have been a lot lighter. I think the only problem that he would have had at that time would be Brock Lesnar, and I don't. I think we're looking around UFC what AED. Brock wasn't quite the champion yet, so he would
Brock,
have.
Brock became champ in November 15th, 2008.
Okay, so he would have probably came back. Brock probably wouldn't have ever been a champion because what would have happened was they kind of gave Brock the title at the time.
Mhm.
Let's say he lost a fight and then he beat Heath Herring. And this is a big topic because the main thing was the negotiations for the Brock fight. Um, but they would have probably gave Randy Couture versus Fedor for the title. He would have beat Randy, and then if Brock would have beaten, I think, a second opponent over Heath Herring, he would have had to fight again. He would have gotten the Fedor fight, uh, which I think Brock would have beat Fedor at the time.
So if you look at who Fedor beat, so his last fight in Pride was Mark Hunt, December 31st, 2006. Mark Hunt was never UFC champion, but he fought for the interim title against Verdum, I believe.
Yeah, don't get me started on Mark Hunt. I don't even like that we're talking about the dude.
Before that, Mark Coleman, UFC champion. He beat Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira twice, UFC champion. Uh, then he signs with Affliction and he fights Tim Sylvia and Andre Arlovsky, both UFC champions. So he didn't really need the UFC. Like it would have been nice to see him in the UFC, but he's one of those guys. He might be the only guy who his career looks just as
Good.
amazing. His resume is stacked no matter what division he's in because divisions bring in people for him. That being said, it would be nice for him to have that UFC championship on his resume just because it
It's the peak.
It's the peak, and casuals today will be like, oh, he was look at what he did. Oh, Pride FC tournament winner, Pride champion. What does that mean? Well, if you don't know, that's at that time that was better than the UFC. That means
Yeah.
more.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
like today, a UFC championship in 2020 is worth more, in my opinion, than a Pride championship from 2004. But at that time, it was still better than the UFC championship.
And the heavyweight division was so much better in Pride. So it also comes down to next is I'm not saying I don't think the first. Oh, what?
Hold on. Let me just wrap up my thought.
Okay.
But that being said, he has a stacked resume. He beat everybody. He would have came to the UFC. Randy Couture is not even a natural heavyweight. He would have got absolutely ragdolled. Fedor would do whatever he wants with him. And it would set up that Brock Lesnar fight that was supposed to happen
Many times.
And I think I do Fedor would get through that pretty handily as well.
I think Brock would have been too big. I personally would always love to see Fedor come in at a light heavyweight division. I always think he's smaller. I would have loved to see him lose a little bit of that belly on him, that little dad belly. He's not a big heavyweight. I think he would have came in and imagine Shogun and Fedor at light heavyweight at the time, stuff like that. But then the second time he was coming into the UFC, I think it would have been a little bit harder. So want to talk about that? What year was that? When Strikeforce?
Strikeforce was a legit competitor. They had real top competition. They ran on Showtime, and then the UFC saw another threat, so they bought them out.
And after it was bought, and let's say to the people that many world champions came over from there to the UFC and won belts. You got Tyron Woodley, Robbie Lawler was last seen there, so many good names.
Dan Henderson was in Strikeforce.
Nick Diaz.
Nate Marquardt.
Top competitions over there for sure.
Fabricio Verdum. It was legit. Luke
Overeem.
Yeah. So
Jacare.
Strikeforce got bought in the end of 2011. So going to
one more. Daniel Cormier.
Yes, Daniel Cormier. There was a heavyweight champion. Exactly. Sorry. Strikeforce got bought out in 2011. Yeah, but near the end of the year in 2011. And at that time, the UFC champion was Junior Dos Santos.
Okay, so Junior was definitely one of the scariest people in the world at that time. So he would have been at the time where he had Shane Carwin, Junior Dos Santos, Cain Velasquez. Those were your main three contenders. Got to put that hair down. Don't want to show that. So this would have been a bad time for Fedor to come in. I think the Brock fight would have been something at that time that would have worked towards him. Fedor was on the downhill of his career. He might have had a resurgence now, but he was knocked out, I think, 3 times in a row at that point.
Yeah, so
it's a loss to Dan Henderson.
It's important to remember he went 1-4 in Strikeforce. His only win was Brett Rogers. He lost to Verdum, Antonio Bigfoot Silva, and Dan Henderson, all by stoppage. Verdum was, but the other two were knockout.
Yeah, and he was going and. Really, Fedor didn't look good. So if he would have signed with the UFC, I think that was a big problem too, is he was coming off those losses. So they couldn't throw him into a big, huge fight, I guess, in the UFC. You could still throw him in there, but it would have, he did have a resurgence. I think he would have had to win a fight before getting that Brock fight. And I think he only wanted the Brock fight. I do not see him being a UFC champion if he would have signed at that time.
That's tough. Yeah, if you look at the things that you had, like you said, you had Cain Velasquez, Shane Carwin, Frank Mir was still hanging around, Junior Dos Santos. Verdum came over as well to the UFC and made a splash at that time as well. We already saw what happened. He fought Verdum. Him and JDS is a tough fight. That's an interesting one. It could go either way because both of them have shown times where they're a little bit chilly.
Not at that time, though. Junior took a beating. This is pre-Cain Velasquez beat down Junior Dos Santos, and that guy to chin. His takedown defense. He was on like a 10 or 9 fight heavyweight streak. It was crazy.
Yeah, that's fair. I definitely would lean towards Junior for that one. But that would set up, let's say he does come over, and let's say Junior things went as they went. Junior fought Cain Velasquez and lost to Cain in the
Hmm.
rematch. That could set up possibly the greatest heavyweight fight of all time in Cain Velasquez versus Fedor Emelianenko.
Yeah, but you'd have to get a win before.
Maybe, maybe not. Like people cut, like they bring people in to have a big name and they just throw them in there, man. It happens.
It happens, yeah. But so my personal opinion, I don't think he would have got a title shot at the second time around.
No, I agree with you. I don't. If he had to work his way up, definitely not. But if they were just bringing him over, like, oh wow, look, we have just using the Fedor card, he could have gotten it. Would he have won? Probably not.
That's what I was getting to. I didn't mean what. Yeah, I agree with you there. Did you want to talk about what if now? What if he was to sign now, since he kind of had a little resurgence?
That's what I was about to get into. Yes. So, and if you look at Fedor's career,
Because he retired there.
he's not retired.
No, he retired during that time too.
So his last 4 fights, he's fought Rampage Jackson, UFC champion, knocked him out. He fought Ryan Bader, got knocked out in the first. Beat Chael Sonnen, UFC title challenger, knocked him out, and knocked out Frank Mir. So
He's knocking it.
They're
He's
older.
knocking out. Yeah. Did you see Rampage?
Yeah.
Did you see Rampage?
Again,
Page?
but you gotta look at it like this. You gotta look at the heavyweight division now in the UFC. It's old. Take Francis Ngannou away, it's a bunch of old dudes.
Yeah, and there's not much going on except Volkov. The fact that Francis is there though is a problem for Fedor. He would never beat Francis in his whole career.
No, but he could. But you like okay, Daniel Cormier, Olenek, Overeem, Verdum, Stipe. They're all over 37. He could be in the mix at 43 years of age today. You could throw Fedor in that division, and he's competitive. I promise.
I think he'd be a top 10. I don't see him being top 5.
I bet you he'd beat Lewis.
Many people would beat Derek Lewis, but I don't think he'd beat Curtis Blades.
No.
I don't. Volkov, he'd beat Volkov.
Yeah.
And he the future champion. I don't think he'd beat Greg Hardy.
Yeah, he beat the shit out of Greg Hardy. Yeah, he would.
I just wanted to mess with you and see your facial reaction there.
Struve would get knocked out by Fedor, no head movement.
Yeah. Did you say Stefan Struve?
No, Struve would get destroyed by Fedor.
Okay, I was like, you didn't just say Struve was relevant, did you? I think he'd be top 10. I don't see him top 5 because Curtis Blades, Ngannou, Stipe, and Cormier were there, and those are problems for him.
He beats Verdum in 2020. I bet anything on that.
I was just about to say I would like to see a rematch if they're going to ever bring him over to the UFC, a rematch with him. But he did say his final fights are in Bellator, and he's signed for 2 more. So
a really, really interesting fight though would be Olenek versus Fedor. That's a great fight.
I'd probably lean towards Olenek. How he looked last fight. He looked chiseled and dieseled.
He did. He was putting in work, and he had conditioning. He was in shape, man.
Yeah, he was swinging bombs. So,
sorry, for my final thought, because Fedor is diminished and the UFC is older now, I do think it would be more fun to see Fedor in now. He'd win a championship because there'd be fun fights for him there right now.
I think the best fight that they can make, and they could put it as a headline of a pay-per-view because they're both draws, honestly, would be the fight that was supposed to be made in Strikeforce before Verdum came in, and they did Overeem versus Emelianenko. I think that would be a great fight if he was going to come into the UFC.
I like that. Yeah.
So, yeah. And that is, I think that's it for the Fedor What If.
We hope you guys enjoyed it. We've been trying to think of some interesting topics for these What Ifs. You guys have any, just let us know because we like doing them.
And if you want an interview with the Marshall Turner, I will give you an interview. Let us know.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Peace.